Good morning again, everyone. I'm Pat Sheehan, along with Hilton Catterley at the Eyewitness News Center, and there are evacuations underway along the Connecticut shoreline. We can tell you right now that evacuations are taking place, and these are being urged strongly by local officials in many of the areas south of Route 1 along the Connecticut shoreline, particularly eastern Connecticut, the eastern two-thirds of the state, in fact, under the gun of Hurricane Gloria as she barrels along our way. Hilton, what is the latest on the storm? I understand Dr. Neil Frank is standing by for us, too.
I think maybe Dr. Frank has the very latest coordinates, so let's go to Dr. Neil Frank in Miami. Dr. Neil Frank, what is the latest position of Hurricane Gloria and what's its status?
Well, the eye of the storm is going to pass very near Atlantic City within the hour. Now, right now it's just a bit offshore, but any kind of a little jog to the left could bring the center of the storm right on the coast there. It's moving 30-35 miles an hour. It's expected to be on the south shore of Long Island by noon, and then on into the south shore of New England, up in the Hartford, Providence area by early afternoon, maybe 2 o'clock or 1:30 or something like that. So it's a fast-moving system, as many of the hurricanes are that move up in that area. It's still a very strong hurricane. It has the potential for a lot of destruction, and so we're quite concerned.
Dr. Frank, we've had some false alarms, as you know, and I'm not trying to ascribe any blame, but we went through Hurricane Belle where everybody held their breaths, and then it wasn't strong. Could you put this storm into perspective?
Well, of course, anytime a storm like this moves northward and encounters the colder water, it tries to weaken, and that's exactly what Hurricane Belle did. Now, if it moves fast enough, it doesn't have time to respond to that cold water, and it looks like this storm, moving 35 miles an hour, is moving fast enough that it's not going to be able to totally respond to the water, the cool water like Belle did, and it's going to be a much more serious hurricane, and this one has the potential for a lot of destruction.
I guess what I'm asking, and this is not a false alarm.
Well, right now it's not a false alarm, and you're only 3 or 4 hours away, and it would be very unusual, I think, if this storm would weaken completely to the point where you wouldn't have anything except like you experienced in Belle. This is a more serious case. Now, I would say this, it looks like it's going to arrive at low tide. And that's very good news, because the difference between an extreme disaster and just a major problem is the difference between high and low tide. The 38 storm, high tide, as you know, a very disastrous storm, yet 44, that was about as strong as the 38, but it arrived at low tide.
Okay, Dr. Frank, thank you very much. We're beginning to lose our satellite picture with you. I guess the weather interference is starting to affect some of the feeds that we're getting. Good luck to you down at the National Hurricane Center.
Thank you.
Hilton, let's point out, too, to folks that we have reached this point now, at least according to most authorities, where it's getting a little bit too late. If you have not yet done all of those things we've been talking about over the past couple of days, the Coast Guard, for example, says if you haven't tied down the boat, don't go out and try and do it now. We've really reached the point where the winds are beginning to whip on the Connecticut shoreline already.
They really are. Let's look at our maps, because Dr. Neil Frank outlined the projected path. It takes it right over southern New England, and he was a little bit iffy on the times because the storm is accelerating right now, and so if you are anywhere close to this predicted path, Pat pointed out, now is too late to undertake any major projects. You don't want to go down to the shoreline to see how things are or to moor your boat. You've lost that opportunity, but you can do some things indoor and around the house.
We want to point out to people, let's face it, if you don't know it by now, the entire state, not officially, because the governor has not yet acted, although we are expecting a statement from him within a few moments, the entire state is really shut down in many ways. Aetna and Travelers, for example, just called, said all of their people are on their way home. People who have opened up their businesses today, many of them are shutting down. Many of them didn't open at all today. Schools all across the state are entirely shut down. We can point out to you that it is critical for you to stay inside. Don't go outside to take a look at this storm. We have to warn you right now, because this is the time we can. We don't know if we're going to be losing power, losing many of you as viewers during the course of the day. When you're talking about live wires that are down, you don't know if it's a live wire, you don't know if it's a telephone wire, things like this. Keep those storm precautions in mind. We've been giving you for the past couple of days. They are critically important. People say, well, where is it? I'm looking outside, there's some rain, there's some wind. But Hilton, I understand there's a really dramatic turn in terms of the front winds when they hit shore. I know that that's already happened down along the shore.
Jim McDonald is a veteran of hurricanes, not only in forecasting them, he's experienced them, and his advice to us last night and his reminder again this morning is when these things begin to move in, these weather conditions can change very abruptly, very radically in what is a 40 or 35, 40, 50 mile an hour wind, and you say, well, I've seen this a number of times. Suddenly, within a matter of minutes, you're dealing with full hurricane force conditions, and that can arrive very suddenly. We're going to try to give you as much notice as possible, but maybe the power is going to go out. Let's use radar right now and show people where the precipitation echoes are. National Weather Service radar set on the 140-mile range, and you see a heavy shield of precipitation moving up from the southwest. Put it another way, a lot of rain echoes moving up from New York State, Long Island, and over New York City, and that is part of Hurricane Gloria, and it's moving directly toward us. So we're going to have flash flooding problems inland, and not only tidal flooding along the shoreline, but flash flood problems inland.
We are expecting to have winds that will go even inland up to the 70 or 80 mile an hour range, too. Governor O'Neill, I understand, is standing by. We'll be back in just a moment and continue with our storm coverage. Early this afternoon, there have been evacuations south of Route 1, the Boston Post Road, all along the eastern two-thirds of the state of Connecticut. Not all neighborhoods are being evacuated. People are being urged, however, to listen carefully to local announcements. Local officials are making the determinations which roads may be those that will be underwater, which homes might be those that are in danger. We said a few minutes ago, and we want to reiterate right now, it is too late for you, at least at this point, to go out and try to take on any major shopping. Many of the stores are already shut down, and people who had been advised for the past couple of days to stock up on such items as non-perishable foods and batteries and whatnot, flashlights, candles, please, this is not the time to try to run to the car and get out to the store. The storm will be arriving here shortly. The heavy winds already are battering sections of Long Island and are moving now toward the Connecticut shoreline. There will be a dramatic turn in the weather in perhaps the next 45 minutes to an hour. Hilton Catterley is with me right now, can tell us a bit about the storm track. Governor O'Neill is about to make a statement over at the Emergency Center, and we'll be going to him live as soon as he is available to us.
Well, we're waiting on Governor O'Neill, and we'll break away as soon as he's available. Let's look at radar, because it shows heavy showers and a pretty heavy area of rain moving into southern New England, especially southwestern Connecticut now. And as you look at this radar imagery, I'll tell you that the River Forecast Center in Bloomfield has issued a statement advising us to be alert for rapid changes, especially in small streams and brooks that run near our homes, because we are into what might be described as a flash flood situation. As a matter of fact, flash flood watches are in effect for all of southern New England. That's because we expect drenching downpours over the next several hours, and the stream levels could change abruptly and very rapidly. Steve, we've got a new piece of information that is just coming into the Weather Watch. We have a tornado watch that has been issued for parts of southern New England, from near Bridgeport, Connecticut, down to Hyannis, Massachusetts.
We will plot that.
Yeah. We will plot that on our maps in a minute, but basically it includes most of Connecticut, virtually all of Connecticut, virtually all of Rhode Island, and much of central and eastern Massachusetts. The reason a tornado watch has been issued is because when a hurricane moves inland to the right of the hurricane path, frequently, not all the time, but frequently, tornadoes do develop. And so we're telling you now that in addition to a hurricane warning, an imminent approach of a hurricane moving into southern New England, we also have a tornado watch in effect.
Yeah. And, all the way up into Boston as well.
Right. Jim McDonald has plotted this for us, and I'll just verbally describe it for you. It covers all of Connecticut, all of Rhode Island, and all of Massachusetts except for the Berkshires. So
let's point out that the path of this storm, as we are seeing it now, and as Dr. Neil Frank told us live just a few minutes ago, is to, at least as best we know right now, go up the eastern portion of Connecticut. The eye would go in on that side. Now, we've been told by you over the past several days, Hilton, that the most damaging winds are to the east or to the right of that storm track. Is that correct?
They are. Now, then, one thing to point out right now, the storm has been fairly close to land over the past few hours, overnight and during the early morning hours, and the eye is becoming a little bit indistinct, so this may become pretty academic. By the time it gets here, we could just have a very powerful windstorm. That's our latest color satellite photo that we have. But so it may be a little bit difficult to say the eye is within 2 or 3 miles of Islip, Long Island, or Bridgeport, Connecticut, or New Haven later in the day when it gets up here.
Why is that? Why does the eye tend to collapse then?
Well,
when it reaches
close
land?
enough to land that there's a lot of friction. As a matter of fact, it's just east of Atlantic City, New Jersey right now, just a few miles offshore from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and moving northward about 35 miles an hour now. The storm is still powerful. I'm not indicating that it's falling apart. It's simply becoming a little more difficult to fix a central location. So I think we better be pretty general and just say eastern two-thirds of Connecticut right now stands at risk of having a major hurricane this afternoon.
And yet those heavy rains that we're already seeing on the radar are actually coming to the western side of what that projected storm track might be.
Well, they envelop both sides actually they envelop both sides of the hurricane. We have a new view of our radar, and apparently they have elevated the antenna just to show the heaviest bands, and we've eliminated all the real light precipitation, and you can see the banded effect of squalls now beginning to blow in off the Atlantic Ocean. Let me reiterate, because I know people come in and out of television programs. We're under a hurricane warning. That's the basic situation. We expect hurricane conditions to arrive in southern New England from midday into early afternoon. By that we mean strong winds, abnormally high tides, torrential rains. We also have a tornado watch in the area, and we'll go into that in more detail in a minute.
Okay. Marla Romash is standing by right now at the state's emergency center at the State Armory. Governor O'Neill is expected to come in soon and to make a statement.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute, Pat, because the governor has just walked into the briefing room and is about to make that statement.
Good morning again. Give you an update, the information as we have, which is as readily available to you as it is to us. I've signed the Civil Preparedness Emergency document, which has been filed with the Secretary of State, which allows me to continue doing what we have been doing to begin with. And the latest information that we have, it was centered about 80 miles south of Atlantic City, moving northward at 30 miles an hour and expected to speed up. And it certainly has the potential of producing damaging winds and high storm surge. The state police report no emergencies that they know of across the state as far as their operation is concerned. The Department of Transportation report that Groton Airport is closed because of its location. In the low-lying area, Bradley is open still. The last flight is expected out before noon. The New Haven line has one train going in each direction per hour, and will stop at each station across the line. And as of 9:30, commuter buses will continue to run across the state of Connecticut until people are home if need be. Now, we do have some power outages that have been given to us from Northeast Utilities. And across the state of Connecticut, the latest power outages have been a total of 19,535 locations. In eastern Connecticut, 2,971. In northern Connecticut, 279. In southern Connecticut, 12,480. And in western Connecticut, 3,786. We also have report that the Millstone 1, 2, and Connecticut Yankee are closing down. However, they've also assured me, the power company, Northeast Utility, that as far as the amount of power needed will be here from their normal generating stations. Now, that is the report as far as I can give you today. Roberta Blomberg of Northeast Utility is a spokesperson for Northeast, and she is here if need be.
Once again, Governor, no state of emergency yet?
It's as much as a state of emergency as we're going to have. We're not going to close the roads until absolutely necessary, because we want people to be able to get home. Certainly if you're home, stay there. Certainly if you're at work, if the storm hits and when it hits, stay where you are. Don't travel unless absolutely necessary. That's the position as of this moment.
Governor, what is it that you signed? You just said there isn't really a state of emergency. You said at the top of your statement that you signed a civil preparedness emergency document.
Which is pro forma.
And what does that mean?
That allows me to do everything that we have been doing with or without that particular document. However, it is on file, so if I do have to close the roads, then there are no repercussions at a later date from a legal standpoint.
But
Governor, what's happening with the airports and the trains?
The trains we're running a train per hour along the shoreline. The airport in Groton is closed. Bradley Field is open and will continue to stay open until speeds reach high force there, which is not expected much before noontime.
Governor, have you gotten any requests from aid from anyone around the state yet?
We have not received any direct requests for aid. I'd like to show you some of the towns that are evacuating at the present time. You can, this was just handed to me before I came in. The areas in yellow, which are the shoreline towns, some evacuation has taken place across the shoreline towns in Fairfield County, Branford, Westbrook, Old Saybrook, Old Lyme, across eastern Connecticut as well. That is the information that we have as of this moment.
Governor, what have you heard from town officials about the degree of cooperation from people who have been asked to evacuate?
We haven't heard anything one way or the other. We haven't heard any complaints from any residents that have been asked to leave, and we haven't heard any requests from any selectmen or mayors across the state needing state assistance for emergency evacuations as of this point. So as of this moment, we have no knowledge of any problems.
Are these voluntary evacuations?
They are. They're voluntary.
Did you order the banks closed because the police were elsewhere and might be a robbery?
Well, that was a thought, but I think we should close the banks because we really don't want people out and about if they don't have to be out and about. And that was the decision to do so.
What about other private businesses? What's your position right now?
The position has not changed. That's certainly up to the discretion of the business person themselves. Many plants are closing themselves. Many stores and so forth are closing, and that's the proper procedure to take. We are going to get a good whack from a good-sized storm. How bad it is going to be, still no one knows. Hopefully it won't be as bad as originally anticipated, but no one knows that.
Mr. Governor, in the communities that are being evacuated, have there been any medical problems reported or any injuries in connection with either the down power lines or the evacuation?
Not to us at this position.
What about hospitals in those areas, like in New London and Groton? Are those being cleared out, or are those still operating?
We have heard no problem from those areas whatsoever as far as any evacuation of any hospitals. We do have some information, some convalescent homes, which we have not substantiated as yet. Some are being evacuated along the shorelines, but we don't know that's for sure as of this moment.
Governor, are there any roads that might be reasonably expected to close?
Well, probably some shoreline town roads, I would think, but that again depends on the circumstances, how high the surge is, how much rainfall we get. These things are, at this time, indeterminable.
What information do you have as to what the critical time period is for the state?
They still think somewhere about 1 o'clock-ish that should be reaching the latest report I have, and there's a gentleman here from FEMA. Bob, are you here?
Yes, I'm back here, Governor.
Do you have any other update on that?
No, we don't. I was trying to get some updated information. I don't have any.
So it's still approximately 1 p.m., to the best of our knowledge.
Or the center of the storm?
Well, the height, basically, or when it's arriving and when we'd be really in it, and I've just seen that there may not be an eye by the time it gets here, so hopefully it will dissipate. Of course, no one can predict that.
Governor, is the National Guard being used right now?
National Guard is in standby position in the various armories that, along the shoreline particularly, their vehicles are ready to go. If need be, they will go.
Governor O'Neill with a complete update there coming in at the state's emergency control center, the storm control center at the state armory in Hartford. And the governor, as you may have just heard, if you've just joined us, the governor talking about the arrival of the storm. He is not ordering the shutdown of the roads. He has, however, signed documents giving him complete emergency powers. And Hilton, that is a precaution on behalf of the state of Connecticut. So as the governor said, everything he's been doing is now legal, but he wants to make certain that he does have all of the flexibility necessary. Rail traffic does continue, though limited. Commuter buses will continue. The idea is to get everybody back to their homes as safely as possible. I want to raise, once again, the question did not come up again today, the question of mobile home safety. There are a lot of mobile home parks around, and we have heard, Hilton, throughout the past several days that these are dangerous places for some people to be. They should seek more substantial surroundings if possible.
They should do that, and they should do that now. Mobile homes simply are not safe to be in a strong windstorm, and this is going to be a strong windstorm. As a matter of fact, the latest information we have is that hurricane-force winds should begin along southeast coastal sections of Connecticut late this morning, by late morning, and they should spread inland by early afternoon. So if you live in a mobile home along Connecticut's coastline, now is the time within the next few minutes, next 15 or 20 minutes, you should make a determination to leave, go to a place of safety, a substantial building, and ride the storm out there. You just don't have any more time to sit around and debate. I want to show you, we mentioned a minute ago, we have a tornado watch in the area. I don't want to overemphasize it, but I just want to show you where it is. It includes all of Connecticut, most of Massachusetts, all of Rhode Island, and virtually all of Long Island. And again, a tornado watch simply means that conditions between now and 6 o'clock tonight are favorable for the possible formation of tornadoes. It doesn't mean we have one on target now and moving in. We just have the conditions.
This is the time to warn you. This is the time for action. Conditions will dramatically deteriorate over the next couple of hours. The center of the storm, the brunt of the storm, should arrive across Long Island around 12 o'clock, in the state of Connecticut about 1 o'clock.
And out ahead of it, again, the National Weather Service saying hurricane conditions are expected along parts of Connecticut's coastline, before the noon hour.
We will be back with you and continue our coverage here from Eyewitness News as events warrant. For now, though, for Hilton Catterley, I'm power of a hurricane, the strongest one we've seen in more than 50 years, apparently, here in this part of the country, is now moving toward the Connecticut shoreline. We are, as they say at the National Hurricane Center, looking down the barrel of a gun. Let's take a look at what the storm looks like. The leading edge of this storm is moving now toward the Connecticut shoreline. We have a live eye picture right now at Hammonasset State Park at the beach in Madison along the Connecticut shoreline. The winds are whipping up the tides. The storm surge itself, as this storm moves toward us in the next couple of hours, is expected to lift the tide some 8 to 10 feet above normal. We have been very fortunate on this historic day that the storm will apparently arrive in southern New England at a point when the tides are receding, when we are heading toward a low tide. Thank goodness for that, because if we were at a high tide, we would be having 8 to 10 foot waves above, or I should say seas above the normal high tide mark, and that of course could wash away entire neighborhoods along the Connecticut shoreline. Evacuations have been taking place all the way through Fairfield County, up through New Haven County, out through Branford and Guilford, out toward Clinton. We understand that all of eastern Connecticut's shoreline, we have had some reports of evacuations. The evacuations will continue through the late morning hours, and of course we are expecting at this point the storm itself, the center of the storm, to arrive on the southern New England shoreline sometime early this afternoon. Hilton Catterley has been monitoring all of the latest developments, and he joins us now with the latest on the location of Storm Gloria as she moves towards southern New England. Hilton?
Well, those pictures tell a vivid story, Pat. We want to look at radar first of all. The National Weather Service radar set on the 140-mile range, and you can begin to see the shape of Hurricane Gloria, an area of general rainfall over southern New England, and then you begin to see the bands winding into the storm, and down here appears to be either one of the bands associated with Gloria itself or perhaps part of the eye wall right down here at the bottom of the picture, and that whole system is moving northeastward very rapidly. How rapidly? Let's look at our maps and I'll show you. Beginning with 6 o'clock this morning, here's where we had Gloria positioned at 6. Now watch the movement between 6 and 9. See how it surged up the coastline between 6 and 9 o'clock. It is now moving at about 35 miles an hour. It is accelerating. It's expected to move more rapidly in the next few hours than it's moving now. The latest information from the National Hurricane Center, this 2 p.m. time is wrong. It will now arrive at the south Long Island shoreline approximately noon as it makes its accelerated course forward toward Long Island and then toward Connecticut shortly after that time. It is 145 miles right now southwest of Southampton, Long Island. That's the current location of Hurricane Gloria. Top winds right now are clocked by Hurricane Hunter planes in the storm at 120 miles an hour. And as I say, it is moving rapidly now towards southern New England with virtually no chance of it veering away. Location at 9 o'clock just off the South Jersey shore. Right now 145 miles southwest of Southampton, Long Island, and again moving rapidly toward Long Island. Winds, well, most recent wind reports we have show winds near gale force along southern New England shoreline. Heaviest winds we've seen in the New York City area have gusted at 51 miles an hour. Do we have stronger wind gusts than that, Jim? Now then, the winds in the New York City area reportedly blowing at about 54 miles an hour. Well, that's the picture of the storm. Again, a tornado watch in effect for our entire area until the storm passes by, and flash flood watches in effect, as well as a hurricane warning. Pat?
Hilton, we of course remind people that this is no time to go out and try to do anything that you hadn't done in the past 24, 48 hours. With the warnings, we have had the blessing of the scientific technology of our times. You think back 20, 25 years to some of the earlier storms that we had back into the mid-50s, perhaps 30 years ago. We didn't have the satellite technology. We could not see these storms coming. We had to rely on ships at sea to be radioing in the information about these massive storms as they headed toward us. We have, as I say, had the blessing of that technology, though, this time, and we have been watching the storm for the past several days move toward us. Many people have taken advantage of those advance warnings, and we have closings for you. We can tell you just universally, all of the schools are closed. All of the banks in the state of Connecticut have been closed down. State employees who are considered to be non-essential, meaning non-emergency employees, are not working. The insurance companies are all closed down. Your business is shut down today. Call your airline for further information if you are planning on traveling. Bradley International remains open. A few flights are going in and out. that most likely will change. Some of the smaller airports along the shoreline already have shut down. No further flights are going out, of course, because of this monstrous storm. As I say, we indeed are in an historic day here in the state of Connecticut. Back in 1938, the legends were born with the hurricane of '38, the Great Storm. Gloria is said to be a stronger hurricane, and it is bearing down on us at this hour. Channel 3's Marla Romash has been monitoring developments at the Storm Center, the emergency headquarters over at the State Armory building this morning. Marla, what can you tell us?
Pat, the governor has been briefing reporters periodically. His last briefing came about a half an hour ago. He spoke a great deal about the transportation things that you were just talking about. He has not declared a full state of emergency. He simply signed the emergency orders that will allow him to take whatever steps are necessary as the weather gets worse. The roads are still open. State police tell the governor there are no emergencies. Trains you didn't mention. The New Haven line is running 1 train an hour going in each direction, and as of 9:30, commuter buses were still running. They'll stay on the road until everyone's home. The governor reports more than 19,000 power outages, mostly in eastern and southern Connecticut. Northeast Utilities officials here say they'll work to clean up those power outages until the weather gets so bad the crews can't get through. Millstone 1 and 2 and Connecticut Yankee, which are Connecticut's nuclear power plants, have been shut down. Again, the governor said even though they're down, we should have enough energy to keep us through the storm. Northeast Utilities say it's a precautionary measure. And again, the governor briefed us on evacuations that you mentioned earlier, Pat. We expect to hear from him throughout the day as he meets with agency heads, department heads, and gets more information and a better feel for what's going on in the towns. Pat?
Marla, so what we're talking about, though, in fact, when the governor says he's not shutting down the state of Connecticut, he's acknowledging that all of the essential services will remain in place right now. People do have a way to get to their homes. He's not going to try to barricade the roads in any sense.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why he said he was keeping the roads open, because he felt it was important that people trying to get home were able to do that. That's why the commuter buses are still running, and that's right. That's why the roads are still open. Okay, Marla, we'll be back with you as events warrant. Thanks very much. Marla Romash reporting live from the Storm Emergency Center over at the State Armory building.
New figures, slightly new figures, and what we have right now into the Weather Watch. Let's take a look at the National Weather Service radar again, because that paints a pretty graphic picture of where the precipitation echoes are. And you see that little band of precipitation just south of New York City. Those are part of the rain squalls moving in with Gloria. New York City's reported wind gusts to 54 miles an hour. So gale force conditions expected over all of Long Island, effective right now, and it's just too late to get out and do any errands or anything. Stay put, stay where you are, stay in a secure shelter, and as far as the timetable, full hurricane force winds, peak storm conditions between now and noon on the south shore of Long Island and moving across Long Island Sound, and early afternoon in the eastern two-thirds of Connecticut. New London County will be especially hard hit. It looks like it'll bear the brunt of this storm.
We have two important tips just to pass along to you at this point. The telephone company asks, please don't call up. This is a time when you'd like to have a friend to sit and chat with. Don't call and chat with your neighbors right now. The phone system is being overloaded, and the phone lines, those that stay up, obviously we're hoping they all do, but those lines that stay up will be needed for emergencies. So please don't call up Aunt Sally right now just to sit and say hi and find out how she's doing. Secondly, the question of downed lines. We will indeed have a lot of downed lines down in New York. They don't have to worry about that. They have so many underground systems. Our power lines are out. They are exposed. Northeast Utilities already has crews on standby. They are ready to move out and try to build up the system once again as soon as they can, as soon as the storm passes. But we're told it could take 3 days for all of these services to be restored. This storm update from Eyewitness News with you again.
Hilton Catterley reporting live again from Weather Watch 3 with the latest on Hurricane Gloria. One way to describe the storm is by watching our radar images, and we'll show you what that is in a minute. Another way to describe Gloria is simply to look at it. Look out your window. We'll take you to the shoreline vicariously, and these scenes along Hammonasset Beach just a few minutes ago. This was the Hammonasset area of Madison, where folks have boarded up their homes in preparation for Gloria. This was at a calmer time of the day, earlier in the day, when winds were gusty. It was blustery, but it was not stormy. It is now stormy on Long Island Sound. Gale force winds whipping across the Sound, gusts over 40 miles an hour being reported all along, not only Long Island Sound, but across Long Island and into the New York City area, where gales have not only been recorded, but also storm winds above 54 miles an hour now, reportedly battering the New York City area, at least in gusts, and the gale force winds have worked their way inland. To describe the motion of this storm, here it is right now. Let's backtrack just a minute. At 11 o'clock last night, Hurricane Gloria was approaching Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. By 9 o'clock this morning, it had moved this far, and that's why we say it's accelerating. It's moving rapidly toward the northeast. We'll animate these cloud pictures, and you can track the storm for yourself. Watch it roll up the east coast, drawing a bead on southern New England, and it looks as if hurricane conditions will begin to affect southern New England within the next hour or so. At 9 o'clock, here was Gloria. We expect by noon that the hurricane conditions will be occurring along South Long Island shoreline, and shortly thereafter, the hurricane passing between New Haven and Providence, Rhode Island, around midday or shortly thereafter in Connecticut. We'll be back with another eyewitness update as conditions warrant, and of course...
Connecticut has been shut down. Evacuations are taking place along the Connecticut shoreline. Our hurricane warnings remain in effect. We are expecting the force of this storm to be moving through southern New England between now and 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. This is what the storm looked like as it came ashore at Hammonasset State Park in Madison a short time ago. The fury of the storm is now kicking up winds. We have rated some of the winds already here in the city of Hartford at better than 60 miles an hour in gusts. We've had sustained winds of 40 to 50 miles an hour within the past few minutes. And getting a bird's eye view of that right now, my colleague Jeffrey Cole, who is standing by live right now on the rooftop above us in the city of Hartford. And Jeff, what can you tell us about the way it feels up there right now?
Well, Pat, certainly those 40 to 50 mile an hour winds, we can feel them now, feel them at my back. And Pat, as you look over Connecticut now, looking over at 91 and the Connecticut River, we can officially say that Hurricane Gloria, which we've talked about for a number of days now, is upon us. Gale force winds, hard driving rain that has already flooded streets partially as we drove around the street today. As Hilton Cataly has told us, 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. As he said, we will feel these winds from right now on to the middle of the afternoon, maybe later into the afternoon as well. As you can feel, the wind is quite strong here. On the shoreline, the most dangerous time to be there is right now as Hurricane Gloria comes upon us. Some advice for those of you who are at home right now: stay away from your windows. This wind could easily blow in a window pane quite easily. So stay away from those windows and tape those windows if you already haven't, and you want to stay at home and maybe stay in the lower floors of your home if you can. Once again, Hurricane Gloria is upon us. We can certainly feel it up here. We will be here throughout the afternoon following it. Pat, back to you.
Okay, Jeffrey, thank you very much. We do want to remind people that there are emergency shelters that are available to you in every community within our coverage area. The police in the city of Hartford told us just a few minutes ago that if you lose your power, if you have a problem in the city of Hartford, they're suggesting you go to your doorway. They have cruisers that will be actually monitoring every street, they say, and watching for people in distress. But again, don't go wandering out into the middle of the streets at this point because it can be extremely dangerous outside. This is a most powerful, most dangerous storm, and we are expecting it to be with us for the next several hours. We've had tens of thousands of power outages already reported around the state of Connecticut. Hilton Cataly has been following the wind damage as it comes up the shoreline and into the state of Connecticut, and I know that you've been in contact with many of your weather watchers, one right now.
Pat, we have one of the weather watchers on the phone right now from West Haven, Dave Spillane in West Haven. Dave, you still there with me?
Yes, I am, Hilton.
All right, tell me from your vantage point what's happened during the last half hour.
In the last half hour, the intensity of the storm has increased dramatically. We've had gusts of wind up to hurricane force, and the barometer reading is the bottom is just dropping out. It's down to 29.10, and it's going down very fast.
Now, you and I have talked about your equipment a little bit. Let me ask you, how do you know the winds have gusted at hurricane force?
I was watching it.
You've got an anemometer,
yes,
wind gauge.
I do. Yeah.
Now, as far as your barometer is concerned, put that into perspective for us. Have you ever seen it go down that low?
I've seen it down lower, but I've never seen it go down as fast as it's been going down. I mean, you can almost visually see it going down. That's how it's been going down, especially in the last 2 to 3 hours.
Paint us kind of a little picture here. Where are you specifically in West Haven?
About a mile from the shoreline.
Okay, and what does it look like out the window? What does it sound like to you?
There's a couple of trees are down. There's branches in the road, and a pretty steady rain. It's not really a torrential rain right now, but we've had a few real downbursts. But so far it seems like the rain isn't the factor here. It's apparently the wind.
Okay, now how quickly did the weather change on you this morning?
It came up rather quickly.